Hey guys, tonight we set sail into the salty, sleep-ready waves of ancient Greece, where the breeze smells like olive oil and poor decisions. You're Odysseus, yes, that Odysseus, the clever king of Ithaca, the one who annoyed the gods just enough to earn a 10-year Mediterranean detour with 0 hotel points. Right now, you're drifting in a tired, creaky ship with a handful of restless men, some dubious navigation skills, and the haunting memory of better dinners. It's been a long journey since Troy, where you may or may not have invented the first military prank involving a wooden horse. Now, you're looking for food, fresh water, and preferably a patch of land not trying to kill you. Spoiler, you will not get all three. In the far distance, a rocky little island rises out of the haze, shaped roughly like a goat's profile and promising 0 amenities, but it's land, and your stomach is louder than your caution. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop your location and local time in the comments. I always love seeing where and when you're listening from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You guide your ship toward the shore. The hull bumps gently against pebbles, and your crew groans in that "we've definitely made a mistake" tone you know too well. The beach is silent except for a breeze moving through dry grasses and the low bleating of unseen sheep. The air smells oddly like sour milk and volcano rock, which should probably be your first red flag. Ancient geographers suggest this island might be part of the Aegean's far-flung cluster, though historians still argue whether Homer's Cyclopes were inspired by real people. Perhaps isolated shepherd tribes with unusual rituals, or pure poetic invention. What's certain is that the locals here are not known for their customer service. You stretch your back, sore from rowing and pretending you know where you're going. The rest of the crew fans, out in search of water or olives, or a bakery that miraculously survived the Bronze Age collapse. What they find instead, a flock of thick, curly-haired sheep milling around a stone cave entrance like woolly doormen. Nearby are tall baskets filled with cheese rounds the size of helmets. This is clearly someone's home, but that someone is not currently visible. Cue poor decision number 2. "Let's just take some cheese and go," one of your crew mutters. But no, you, being you, decide it's better to meet the host. Maybe he's friendly. Maybe he has more cheese. Maybe this is one of those small farms with generous samples and no minotaurs. Besides, you're tired. And what's the worst that could happen? Hint: it's large and only has one eye. The cave is surprisingly deep, and the walls glisten with moisture from generations of sheep breath. The floor squishes unpleasantly in spots. Try not to think about it. There's a faint smell of wood smoke, goat hair, and something gamey. You arrange yourselves in a loose semicircle, as if preparing for an awkward dinner party or a surprise performance review. You sample the cheese. It's salty, hard-edged, and possibly aged on volcanic rock, but you've had worse. One of the crew finds a wineskin hanging from a peg. Another finds a massive wooden club propped against the wall, roughly the size of 3 full-grown spears duct-taped together. You wisely ignore that for now. There's no sign of the host. "Maybe he went to market," someone offers weakly. You nod because the alternative, that he's just outside and very large, is less comforting. You settle in, uninvited, to rest and wait. As the sun dips, shadows stretch long fingers across the cave floor. The sheep begin bleating more nervously now, pressing toward the entrance like they know something you don't. Then, like an avalanche with feet, he arrives. The ground shakes as a shadow blocks the light. You glance up and see him, a mountain in man-shape. He has one eye, just one, centered like a porthole on a hairy cliff of a face. His beard looks like it could house birds. His hands are large enough to flatten your whole crew into cave graffiti. He ducks inside, pulls a boulder across the entrance. No, not a rock, a boulder, and grunts. The cave dims. This is Polyphemus, a Cyclops, son of Poseidon. Not the friendliest resume, and as it turns out, not big on visitors. Your crew freezes. You smile nervously, cheese still stuck in your molars. The Cyclops sniffs the air and frowns, then notices you, a cluster of moderately heroic strangers sitting on his dinner rug. There is a long, awkward pause. You consider saying something witty, but nothing good rhymes with, "Please don't eat us." Mainstream historians suggest that Cyclops myths may have stemmed from fossilized elephant skulls. Early Greeks possibly mistook the nasal cavity for a single eye socket. Fun to imagine while the actual Cyclops in front of you is inspecting your men like they're samples in a butcher's window. Then, just as things start to feel like a late-stage job interview, the Cyclops asks, "Who are you?" His voice rumbles like distant thunder and indigestion. You launch into your best diplomatic voice, explaining that you're travelers. Your ship was pushed off course, and you just wanted to taste some local cheese. You leave out the part where you were totally raiding his pantry. He listens. He nods. Then he picks up 2 of your men and eats them. No seasoning, no apology. The rest of you spend the night wide awake, pretending to be invisible. And just like that, your simple snack stop has turned into a myth with teeth. You don't sleep. Not really. You lie there in the musky dark, wedged between a basket of cheese wheels and one of your men who's definitely muttering prayers under his breath. Outside, the sheep baa softly in their sleep. Inside, the Cyclops, Polyphemus, snores like a landslide echoing down a canyon. Every time he exhales, the torches flicker. Every time he shifts, you wonder if he's reaching for seconds. Dawn arrives reluctantly. A sickly, pale light oozes through a gap in the boulder he used to block the cave entrance. Polyphemus stirs. He sits up, stretches his enormous limbs with the creak of shifting mountains, and promptly grabs 2 more men for breakfast. It's unsettlingly casual, like someone reaching for pastries on a lazy morning. You don't scream. You don't run. Because where would you go? The entrance is still blocked by a rock so large it might as well be a natural disaster. You sit. You think. You regret everything you've ever done to annoy Poseidon, especially that time you didn't tip the sea priest. Once fed, Polyphemus herds his sheep out of the cave. He reaches for the boulder, rolls it aside with a grunt and an effortless push of his shoulder, then, just as effortlessly, seals the cave behind him. Daylight disappears again. Your crew groans in the dark, the echoes bouncing off damp walls like terrified whispers. You count heads. Fewer now. And now it's your turn to do what you're famous for. Not fighting, not sailing, thinking, scheming. You run your fingers along the cave wall as you pace, touching grooves and gouges made by time and livestock, and maybe some previous visitors who didn't get Yelp reviews. One of your crew spots a pile of timber, dry bark-stripped logs stacked near the wall. Too thick for kindling, too smooth to be random firewood. You pull one out. It's hefty, longer than you are tall, a tree branch turned club, or with a little effort, something sharper. And so the plan begins. You strip the bark from the log completely, revealing pale wood underneath. You and your men sharpen one end with a dagger, working silently and quickly. You heat it in the fire until it glows red, then bury it beneath sheep dung and ash to hide it. The smell is immediate and unforgettable. Congratulations! You've invented stealth barbecue. Of course, you still need to get close enough to use it. You need him unaware. You need bait. And that's when your hand brushes against your wine flask. Now, the wine you carry isn't your average tavern swill. This is really good stuff. Given to you by Marin, the priest of Apollo in his Maris. after you spared him and his family. Rich, dark, and syrupy, meant to be diluted with 20 parts water, you brought it as an offering, or a bribe, or in moments like this, a very polite weapon. Polyphemus returns at dusk, shoving the boulder aside like it's just a barn door on a hinge. His sheep shuffle in around his legs, curling up for the night. He, again, casually scoops up 2 men for dinner. You grimace. You've stopped keeping track. It's easier that way. But tonight, you have a new approach. Wait, you say, standing. Before you finish eating, would you like a drink? He looks at you with his one eye narrowed. The expression is somewhere between confusion and curiosity. You uncork the flask and pour some wine into a wooden bowl. The cave fills with the scent, sweet, fermented, almost floral. Polyphemus leans down and slurps it up. He blinks, then burps, a sound so deep it shakes pebbles loose from the walls. More, he says. You pour more. You watch his lips turn slightly red from the strength of the vintage. By the 3rd bowl, he's grinning like a man who's just discovered karaoke, and this is where you slide in the next phase. You've been such a generous host, you say, gently sarcastic. Might I ask your name? He laughs, a deep, thudding sound like rolling stones. Polyphemus, he replies, chest puffed. Son of Poseidon, I fear no man. You nod solemnly, hiding the tiniest smirk. Well, my name is Nobody. Historians still argue whether Homer intended nobody as a direct translation or a Greek pun. Outis, a word so clever and subtle that even a Cyclops with limited brain real estate fell for it. Either way, it works. Polyphemus lurches, staggers, and falls backward like a toppling statue, narrowly missing one of his own sheep. His snoring begins instantly. The sheep don't seem fazed. You grip the sharpened timber, now glowing faintly from the fire. It's not heroic. It's necessary. You and your men lift the log together, the heat searing your hands through the cloth wraps. You march forward slowly, carefully, positioning the point above his eye. You wait, you brace, and then you strike. The smell is immediate. Burning flesh, singed hair, the scent of something mythic and monstrous being undone. Polyphemus screams, a sound that shatters the quiet and likely causes nightmares on neighboring islands. He thrashes, smashing his fists against the cave floor, howling and calling for help. And here's where nobody earns its payoff. Other Cyclopes, yes, there are more, call from the hills. What's wrong, Polyphemus? He screams back, nobody is hurting me. And they, being terrible neighbors and linguists, shrug and return to whatever it is that one-eyed giants do in their downtime. Maybe they're baking more of that rock cheese. Inside, the chaos is deafening. The boulder is still in place. The Cyclops is blind, but alive and furious. And the next move? It'll require some very fuzzy accomplices. The Cyclops is now blind, bleeding, and bellowing like an injured mountain. He gropes the cave walls with wild swipes, each one powerful enough to crush ribs or dreams, or both. You and your remaining men flatten yourselves against the stone, hearts pounding, your minds racing with one desperate question. How do we get out of here alive? The answer, as it turns out, is sheep. Lots and lots of sheep. You watch as Polyphemus drags the boulder halfway open at dawn, letting his flock wander out for the day. He still needs them. They're his livelihood, his alarm clock, and possibly his only friends. But he's cautious now. He drops to his knees, spreading his massive arms across the opening like a living gate. As each sheep trots past, He feels along their woolly backs to make sure no stowaways sneak through. It's like TSA, but greasier. And yet, this gives you an idea. That morning, while the Cyclops sulks in the far corner of the cave, nursing his shattered eye and occasionally muttering, "Nobody. I'll get you. Nobody." You and your men crawl among the sheep. You pick the biggest, fluffiest ones, preferably the ones that look like they've eaten well this season. You tie yourself beneath their bellies, clinging to the wool like a mildly traumatized backpack. It's not comfortable. Your face is full of fleece. The smell is a pungent blend of hay, ammonia, and questionable decisions. But it's the best shot you've got. You whisper final instructions. You breathe slowly, and you wait. When the morning comes, Polyphemus once again positions himself by the entrance. His fingers hover like pale tree trunks, trailing across each sheep's back as they shuffle by. He grumbles about his eye, about revenge, about how he's going to write a strongly worded prayer to Poseidon. But he doesn't notice you, or the men. He never checks beneath. You slip past him, clinging to that sheep like your life depends on it. Which, spoiler, it does. The sunlight is almost blinding. The air is sharp and clean compared to the smoky cave. One by one, your men emerge, shaking and smelly but intact. You unhook yourself from your woolly transport and crouch in the scrubby grass, watching the cave mouth. And finally, sweet mercy, everyone's out. You rush back to the ship. The beach feels different now, like it's been holding its breath this whole time. You shove the boat off the rocks, oars in hand, men panting. You are so close to getting away clean. But then, because of course, you turn back. You want him to know. You need him to know. So you stand at the prow, cup your hands and shout, "Polyphemus, if anyone ever asks who blinded you, tell them it was Odysseus, king of Ithaca." Silence. Then a roar so loud it nearly knocks the ship sideways. Polyphemus charges from the cave, boulder in hand. He hurls it toward your voice, guided only by rage. It misses by a breath. The wave crashes against your stern and nearly spins the boat. You grab the rudder and shout again, because once you start petty, you might as well commit. Another boulder. This one lands even closer. Your men scream. You laugh, because what else can you do? At this point, you've either survived a god's son or just auditioned for ancient reality TV. Polyphemus, frothing and furious, staggers back toward the rocks. And this is where things go from "we made it" to "oh no, we've just made things worse." Because Polyphemus starts praying, not to Zeus, not to Apollo, but to Poseidon, his literal father, which seems deeply unfair. He raises his hands and calls out across the sea, "Father, I've been wronged. Let Odysseus never reach home. Or if he must, let it be alone, miserable and cursed." Historians still debate whether this moment marks the true start of Odysseus's prolonged misfortunes. Many believe this was the curse that truly trapped you for a decade more, unraveling any hope of a straight shot back to Ithaca. And you? You realize too late that mocking a Cyclops with a sea god parent might not have been the wisest flex. Still, for now, you're free. The ship slips over the waves like a whisper. Your crew slowly relaxes, their eyes wide and stunned, some still flecked with sheep hair. You don't speak for a while. You just row. The wind is cool. The stars begin to peek out above the horizon. One of your men clears his throat. "Was it worth it?" he asks. You glance back, at the island, at the cave, at the slowly shrinking figure still roaring your name across the sea. And then you smile. We got the cheese, didn't we? The crew groans. Someone throws a stale crust of bread at you. You duck and laugh. Later that night, you distribute the remaining wine and sheep cheese. It's meager, but it tastes better than anything you've had in days. Maybe it's the relief. Maybe it's the absurdity. Maybe it's that odd, comforting truth of your life. When everything goes wrong, you somehow still manage to float. And the stars, uncaring as ever, sparkle quietly overhead. By the next morning, you're far enough from the Cyclops' island that the roar of his grief is just an echo tucked into the sea breeze. But the sea has changed. The wind stutters. The water is less blue and more brooding. Your men keep glancing over their shoulders, as if Poseidon himself might lurch out of the foam with a trident and bad attitude. You don't blame them. The air carries attention now, like the sea is holding its breath. Still, you sail on, navigating by the stars, dodging crags and currents, making small talk about who snored worst in the Cyclops' cave. The answer is clearly Eurylocos, who could outsnore a hydra in heat. You try not to dwell on the curse. You try not to picture Poseidon's furrowed brow and very aquatic wrath. Instead, you let yourself reflect, quietly. In that slow, spiraling way your brain gets when it's both exhausted and a little smug. You think about the Cyclops, the size of him, the stink of him, the rage, and how something as small as a wineskin and a fake name turned a living mountain into a flailing, helpless mess. Historians still argue whether Polyphemus represents brute force over cunning, or whether Homer just had unresolved beef with tall people. Either way, it's hard not to marvel at the trick itself. How easily language became your sword. A good pun saved your skin, but you also know that this escape came at a cost. 6 men didn't make it. The numbers shrink around you. The boat feels too spacious in all the wrong ways, and that's the thing about leadership. It's not just clever speeches and stunt escapes. It's watching your crew sleep, knowing who's missing from the lullaby of snores. You try to push the guilt aside. It never leaves. It just hides in the corners of your day, like a shadow that knows your name. The sea, meanwhile, remains temperamental. Waves slap the hull like they're testing your resolve. You've learned by now that every island you approach carries risk. Golden apples, seductive voices, spontaneous transformations into pigs. It's like the Greek world decided basic hospitality was too boring. But for the moment, there's calm. You fish. You mend sails. You even teach one of the younger crew how to tie a knot that won't unravel if he sneezes. There's laughter again, cautious but real. Then one night, a seagull circles your mast 3 times and drops a fish directly onto your lap. A good omen, maybe. Or Poseidon's way of saying, "Don't get cocky." Still, you take it as a sign. You sail for days, sometimes weeks, touching shore only when your supplies thin out or when someone insists they saw a fresh spring. You're careful. You test the air for magic. You avoid islands that smell too sweet or hum with music. You leave behind a rock that looks suspiciously like it might turn into a nymph if you blink twice. You pass other sailors, mostly merchants, and swap tales. Word of the one-eyed giant starts to spread. Some embellish it. Odysseus punched the Cyclops in the face. He rode out on a golden ram. You don't correct them. You just smile and ask for more olives. Eventually, you find yourself at a new island. Calm shores, no ominous clouds. Just a wide beach, a grove of fig trees, and goats. Actual goats. Not people-turned goats or enchanted goat illusions. You land, set up a small camp, and let the crew rest. That night, Around a crackling fire, one of your men pulls out the cheese you salvaged from the Cyclops' cave. A few pieces remain. Hard, a little pungent, but still edible. You take a bite. It tastes like victory, sour and strange, with a hint of moldy revenge. And here, finally, you tell the full story. They've heard bits of it, of course. They lived most of it. But you add the colors now. The smell of the cave, the sound of the Cyclops' nails scraping the stone, the precise texture of sheep wool against your face. You exaggerate a little. You can't help it. A storyteller's instinct. But you also give credit to the crew who held the timber with you, to the men who kept their nerve, to the sheep who unknowingly became accomplices in one of the strangest prison breaks in ancient history. They laugh, they wince, they nod. And then, one of the older sailors speaks up. That trick with the name? Nobody. Where'd you learn that? You shrug. Some old tales. My grandfather used to say the cleverest man in a room is the one who names himself last. The fire crackles. The waves lap gently at the shore. Somewhere in the dark, a goat bleats like it's telling its own version of the story. And for a moment, just a breath of time, you feel safe. As if maybe the gods have turned their gaze elsewhere. As if maybe, just maybe, this Odyssey could begin to turn homeward. But then the clouds shift, the wind changes, and the sea, your old friend and fickle enemy, begins to whisper again. The next morning, you're already awake before the sun flattens itself against the horizon. You've been watching the waves breathe in and out all night, lulled not by their rhythm, but by the quiet dread curling in your gut. You know this part, the part where things have gone too smoothly for too long. In Greek mythology, peace isn't the reward, it's the bait. So you wake the crew early, pack up your meager supplies, and push the ship off the beach without ceremony. The goats bleat you farewell, or maybe a warning. You don't linger to ask which. Once back on the water, the weather starts its mood swings. One moment, it's glassy calm. The next, the wind comes in sideways like Poseidon's blowing raspberries from deep under the sea. The crew mutters about omens. A seagull flies backward. Your helmsman develops a sudden interest in whether dolphins carry grudges. Still, you push onward. There's no port in sight, no welcoming shore, just open water and the kind of ominous cloud cluster that screams divine consequence. You're days from the Cyclops' island now. But the curse, that impulsive, ego-fueled curse, is stretching behind you like seaweed in a current, and it's starting to wrap around the ship. Strange things happen. A compass needle that spins in circles, a bird that lands on deck and stares directly at you for an hour without blinking. One of the crew wakes up from a nap and insists he dreamed about drowning in olive oil. You give everyone extra rations just to calm the nerves. You pass around the last of the wine, trying to pretend you don't see the horizon tilting slightly in the wrong direction. The sea has a sense of humor, and she's just getting started. That night, as the crew drifts off to sleep in bundles, snoring and twitching like a field of overworked shepherds, you stand alone at the bow. You think about how far you've come. Troy, the sack of the city, the cheers, the fire, the stupid, glorious horse. And now here you are, stealing cheese from giants, tying yourself to livestock, mocking monsters, and outrunning sea god wrath like a contestant on a celestial game show. You want to laugh. You almost do. But the wind stiffens suddenly, and in the stillness that follows, you hear it again. Polyphemus's voice, or maybe just the echo of it, carried by the sea, like a curse etched into every drop. And here comes the scholarly debate. Historians still argue whether Odysseus's taunt was courage or folly. Some say it was his way of reclaiming identity after days of forced humility. Others say it was pure hubris, a fatal need to be known. But either way, it changed everything. Because Poseidon heard, and you feel it now, like pressure under your ribs, like a wave that hasn't broken yet. Still, you press forward. You tell stories to the crew, soothing, slow ones. You describe Ithaca, the orchards, the stone halls, the smell of Penelope's favorite oil. You remind them there's a world beyond this watery maze. And then one night, as stars scatter overhead like dropped pearls, you start to dream. You're back in the cave, only this time, it's clean, tidy, decorated somehow, with strange, clumsy furniture carved from boulders. Polyphemus sits at a table eating soup. He gestures for you to join him. Would have been easier, he says, if you just asked nicely. You want to argue, but all you can say is, nobody did what he had to. And Polyphemus sighs. The soup bubbles, and the cave slowly tilts until it's the sea again. You wake up breathless. The boat rocks gently. Your crew stirs around you. Someone mutters something about oars and dreams and snacks. You sit up. The horizon is empty. No land, no monsters, just sea. But you know now, this journey isn't over. Not even close. And the Cyclops? He was just the beginning. So now, as your ship rocks gently under a sky dusted with stars, you finally exhale. The danger for now has passed. The oars rest against the hull. Your men sleep in scattered heaps of limbs and tangled cloaks, the sheep stench still faintly clinging to everything, like a memory that won't quite wash away. The sea is calm, finally, not because it has forgiven you, but because it's watching, waiting. You sit near the rudder, listening to the lapping of waves like the slow tick of time itself. There's a rhythm to it, a quiet lullaby. Even the wind, usually sharp and biting, has softened to something that brushes against your cheek like a hand meant to comfort. You think about what comes next, about islands yet to be found, gods yet to offend, and the strange, winding path home. But not tonight. Tonight, you let the silence settle around you like a second cloak. Heavy, warm, familiar. The stars above blink slow and sleepy. The moon hums in her silver cradle. Even the sea seems to sigh. And there you are, Odysseus, king of Ithaca, flatter of sheep, defier of giants, wrapped in shadow, sailing on. The journey is long. The gods are petty. But for now, just this moment, everything is still. So rest, wanderer, you've earned it.